Okay, looking at the number plane. The number plane is made up of two axes. The one that goes across the page is called the x-axis, and the one that goes up and down is called the y-axis. Where the two axes meet, which is this point here, that's called the origin, and because it's in the middle, it's got coordinates 0, 0. Now, a point on the number plane has two coordinates. The first one is always the x, the second one is always the y. So, if I wanted to plot a point, let's call it A, and I wanted to have coordinates 1, 3. Starting at the origin, I go across 1 and then up 3. So my point A is there. If I want to do another point, I'll call it B, and if that's going to have the coordinates -3, -2, starting at the origin, I go across to -3 and then down to -2, so that's where B will be. If I have another point, I'll call it C, and I have 0, -4, I don't go anywhere crossways, but then from the origin I go down 4, so that's where my point C will be. So two axes, x and y. We also have 4 quadrants. This is the first quadrant, this is the second, third, and fourth. So you should get used to plotting any point on the number plane and getting it in the right position. Looking at integers, integers are whole numbers, but they could be positive or negative as well as 0. Now, when we think of integers, we think about what we have always done. If you're adding two numbers, 3 plus 2. So we start at 3, and then because we're going positive direction, this is the positive direction, then we go 1, 2. So your answer is 5. Then we've always done things like this as well. What if I had 3 minus 2? Once again, I start at 3, but instead of going in the positive direction, I go in the negative direction because these are the negative numbers. And I go from there, I go 2 places in the negative direction. So my answer is 1. Now you've been able to do questions like that for a long time. But what happens if we want to do a question like 3 take away 7? Okay, so I start at the 3. Because it's a takeaway, I have to go in that direction. And I need to go 7 places. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So and where do I land at? My answer is -4. If I have a different one, say if I've got -2 take away 3. Because the first number is -2, that's where I start. The negative sign tells me to go in that direction. And how far do I have to go? 3. 1, 2, 3. So my answer is -5. If I have -2 plus 5, once again I have to start at -2, but then I see a plus sign, which means I go in that direction. How far do I go? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my answer is 3. If I do one more question, I'll go up here. If I have -1 and I want to take away a -3. Okay, so I have to start at -1, which is there. I see a negative sign, which means I go that way. But then I see another negative sign, so that tells me to turn around. And how far do I have to go? 3 places. So 1, 2, 3. So my answer is 2. If you think about it, if a minus sign tells you to turn around, then 2 minus signs mean to turn back around. So two minus signs together like that actually make a plus. So minus 1 plus 3 is exactly the same question. Now the number line that we just used was to do with addition and subtraction. When you're doing multiplication and division, it's different. You can't use the number line, you just have to learn the rules. If I've got a positive number and I times it by a positive number, I end up with a positive number. But if I've got a positive number and I times it by a negative number, my answer is a negative number. If I've got a negative number and I times it by a positive number, my answer is still a negative. But if I've got a negative number and I times it by another negative number, my answer is positive. Now those same rules apply whether it is multiplication or division. So I could go here and get rid of these, and then if I have a plus divided by a plus, my answer is a plus. Positive divided by a negative is a negative, negative divided by a positive, a negative, and a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So let's have a look at a few examples. If I have 3 times negative 4, 3 is a positive 3, so a positive times a negative is a negative, and 3 4s are 12. If I have negative 6 and I times that by 5, a negative times a positive is a negative, and 6 5s are 30. If I have negative 5 and times that by negative 2, negative times a negative is a positive. Because it's a positive number, I don't need to write the little plus sign, and then 5 2s are 10. Lastly, a little bit trickier, if I have 3 numbers multiplied together, a negative times a negative is a positive, but then I'm timesing it by another negative, so my answer will be negative. Then 2 3s are 6, 6 4s are 24. So the answer is negative 24. If I have some divisions, I want to go 30 divided by negative 3, positive divided by negative is a negative, and 30 divided by 3 is 10. If I have a negative 15 and I want to divide that by 5, negative divided by positive is a negative, and 15 divided by 5 is 3. And lastly, if I've got negative 18 divided by negative 6, negative divided by negative is a positive, and then 18 divided by 6 is 3, but I don't really need the plus 3. My answer is just 3.